David and Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, Episode 25. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, David and Wiebe. In this particular episode, Anime had the chance to sit down with Jadesong, so the primary feature of this episode will be that interview with Jadesong. And I would say that her story, compared to many of the others who have been on the podcast, is a very unique and different one. And that's neither a slight against Jadesong nor the people who have already been on the show. However, I would suggest using some discretion when listening to this particular episode. If you are someone who is easily offended or you happen to be listening with your kids, you may want to save it for later. So without further ado, here's the interview with Jadesong. Visit us online at www.daw-music.com/daw-podcast. And don't forget to spread the word. Tell your friends about this podcast.
I am Mae Alexander. I am here with Jadesong. Today we will be interviewing her. Unfortunately, David couldn't be here today, so it's just me. Hi Jadesong, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. Things are well.
Cool. So we're here to talk about you. You are a local folk musician, kind of getting into a bit of blues and jazz and whatever you feel like. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, you bet. Of course. I have been living here in Calgary for 10 years, so at this point consider myself Canadian. I am American and came pretty much up the West Coast. Started out in California and grew up in Oregon. So I was pretty much in the center of the States there in Eugene, and that was quite an eclectic place to grow up, you could say. A hippie haven and a Grateful Dead mecca, a destination for many Easterns to come every summer. We kind of had the barter fair people would come, and so big influence in that way as far as drum circles go, and as far as tribal music and I guess jams. And then went up and did some schooling up in Portland in my 20s and finished up in Seattle.
And where did you go to school?
I went to school for a while in all three places down in Eugene. I went to school for about 2 years studying music at the local Lane Community College, so that was really nice straight out of high school. Yeah.
Great. And you have a big festival there in George, Washington. Do you not at the Gorge?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Am I listing the wrong
in the Gorge,
location?
there's lots of festivals for sure.
Okay, so how has that influenced you playing music in both the United States and Canada, do you think?
Well, like I said, I was lucky living on the I-5 corridor. There was lots of different music that would come up, and I was also lucky to go to a lot of summer festivals and a lot of outdoor type of music, which brings, there's rock shows and that sort of influence, but then there's like the people's type of music, real roots music, and music coming up from Ecuador and coming up from Guatemala, and a lot of reggae music as well, Jamaican music. So it's funny because Eugene's a very white town, but there's a real diverse musical influence. And then, of course, when you go up to Portland, our big city here in Oregon, it's quite diverse, and there's a big black community that's there as well. And my mom was an amazing taste for music connoisseur, I would say. Like, she was very influential for me in that way, and I was lucky. But it's funny because I grew up listening to tons of Canadian music and not even realizing they were all Canadian.
Awesome.
You're Neil Young and you're Joni Mitchell's and Gordon Lightfoot and Anne Murray. Like,
fantastic.
All those artists were going pretty regular in our house. And,
okay, cool.
And then the West Coast stuff, the rock stuff. My mom was really into.
Nice.
What I call the triple Jonies. It was actually four. I already mentioned Joni Mitchell, I think. But like Joan Baez and a lot of the protest music of the 60s. And so I was lucky in that way.
Okay.
The three Jones being Joan Armatrading, Joan Baez, and, I guess like I said, Joni Mitchell.
Okay.
But
Would you say that's what's influenced you to get into the activism that you're involved now?
Yeah, well, growing up poor would probably be the reason. And growing up queer and growing up feeling like an outsider would probably be, growing up where you're oppressed, basically not having civil rights, or being born on the cusp of the Black movement that happened and the Black Panthers and the American Indian movement that was happening along the West Coast. Those movements, of course, inspired me and influenced me, for sure. And my mom was, a child of the 60s, and so she was really scared during the Reagan era. I was really out in the 90s, and my music and being a part of using my voice in that way was a real good way for me to get out a lot of my frustrations.
Okay.
So I could talk about that for a long time.
Something that kind of fascinates us up here is the huge coffee house movement house concert movement that seems to have popped up in Oregon and Washington, as well as the coffee house. I mean, when I lived there, you couldn't walk into the crappiest coffee house in Portland and not have live music on a Thursday or Friday night.
Yeah.
Were you ever involved with the house concert? Was that happening while you were down there?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think people have been jamming with each other for a long time. And,
exactly. Yeah.
I think all through cultures, people have done that, and there's different groups that value it more than others. Something about people that live near the ocean and near the coast, you have those kind of influences. But in the West Coast, like I said, going to outdoor festivals, the Irish type of playing where you could go and just jam in a circle, there's lots of that going on the West Coast, and also more of the tribal, pagan, drum circles where we come together and do a ritual on the 4 quarter days, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But as far as the movement that's occurring now, I mean, I think that just comes also out of trying to move forward with the industry and the way to reach people. And that, you can have a really nice concert with 30 or 40 people at someone's home, in the backyard or in their living room. And so, I mean, I think that as a movement is a conscious way for artists to be able to fuel and fund themselves nowadays with the cost of everything and the way that the music movement is in the industry, I guess, has changed.
As an East Coaster, for me, like, kitchen parties are the thing, and to me it's almost counterintuitive to charge money to go have a party in someone's kitchen, right? So it fascinates me, and it's certainly something where I'm not quite sure how I feel about it yet.
I think there has to be a formalness. I think that when you're an audience in someone's home, you want to still be hosted, and you want to be hosted on a level that you would maybe in a restaurant or a cafe. So the person that's putting that energy together needs to make sure it's a nice space, and when you walk into it, you're enjoying your setting and you're connecting with the artist. And one of the things that's really nice about it is that any venue that's not a bar and that's not related to alcohol being sold or not related to some sort of so many bars and places are segregated by, this is an Irish bar, this is a country bar, this is a gay lesbian bar, this is a clubhouse music bar. When you go to someone's home, you can embody any of that, but you can drop all of the kind of facade and just make your own show. And I love that about community centers.
Yeah.
So if someone has a house that can, like I said, 20 or 30 people, I mean, paying $20 or $30 to see someone and intimately really connect with their music, as long as it's done in a classy way and it's not just like all casual, then I think that's great.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So have you formally released any of your music, or are you just a live kind of gal?
I'm one of those strange kind of cats that's very acoustic in what I do, and very, like I said, playing festivals, hundreds of festivals over the years. I have recorded on a couple other people's albums, and I've recorded for a couple plays, like down in the States, me and a couple Riot Girls of the day, Kathleen Hanna and a girl with Dutch Boy Fingers, what band was she, and Shannon. We did a couple different, pieces that were used, like I said, in the theater, local in Portland. Other than that, no, I haven't recorded my own music. I'm working on my first demo right now.
Oh, awesome.
I have probably 10 or 20 albums worth of music, so I think that the next couple years will be busy.
Where would somebody find a Jadesong recording?
I have very little online right now, but that's going to change in the next few months.
Okay.
But I do have a Facebook account that's just my first name, Jadesong, which is like the stone, the green stone, and song, the word song.
Okay.
And then also I do have a MySpace account. It's Jadesong Music.
Cool.
And what else do I have going on? The usual. I'm on YouTube, but I don't have any videos yet, so it's weird. We have some more questions you'll ask me about that.
I'll ask you about that for sure.
Being an older person at 41 in the music industry, it's really important to be online.
Hey, our bass player's 42,
There
so
you go.
You're not old. Unless you think you are.
That's right.
You've talked about your influences and everything else. What inspires you when you're writing? Is it just anything around you that's happening? Is it specific passions?
I would say anything around me that's happening.
Okay.
You know, my music for me has definitely been a therapeutic mode, and I've been lucky to have it. I think a lot of people don't have a creative outlet, and especially as a writer and as a poet. I did really well in school with English. I struggled with math and struggled with some other things, but when I connected math with music and started to see the pattern in nature in every single thing, from the way we talk to the, you know, the sounds that are around us to nature. So yeah, I think in that way, music's just really powerful. It helps you focus, and I definitely tend to write strong songs about myself and overcoming my own doubt and a lot of stuff that's pretty therapeutic, I would say. You know, like, it's going to be okay, man, keep your head up. You got friends who love you. There's a lot of...
Good.
Yeah, well, the 90s were hard, too. Reagan years, come on, Bush. We needed those songs. But it's also nice to celebrate and be able to just, like, find joy in everyday things, too. I need to write more up songs. My songs are pretty sometimes kind of down.
Kind of serious?
Yeah, a bit.
So I know you've played a couple festivals. I know you've done some street performing. Why don't we go through what you have done before we start talking about my next question?
Sure. What specifically?
I think you've played the local folk festival here in Calgary, have you not?
No, I haven't, actually.
Oh, no, you haven't. Okay.
No, as far as Canada goes, I've been pretty plugged into one of the local groups called Arusha, and they do some great work in town. I've done... The peace movement here is also pretty wonderful. You know, a lot of the Iraq War movement rallies that we've had, I've been at and was happy to lend my voice. And then a lot of things with the Marsha Ellen Maidal and what Marsha's done over the years. So things like Femme Fatale and God, what else has she put on? I played some drums.
Festival, Raise Your Voice. I Want to Hear Your Voice, pardon me, the Vagina Monologues, yes.
Yeah, so I did some drumming for that as far as just in the lobby for a couple of her shows. So it's been good. I mean, the scene here in Calgary, although small, is, I mean, I wouldn't even say small. I would just say that it's somehow hidden in some ways, and so you have to find it. I really plugged into the techno dance community when I got here. They reminded me of Oregon. You know, there's a lot of love there, a lot of hippies, a lot of trance.
There is a lot of love.
I'm kind of over it a bit now, but you know, as far as the DJs community and the out, you know, gay men that have been here and been pretty visible for me to see, that's been wonderful. But now I'm really plugging into the live music scene. I just did an open mic at Mikey's the other night this week, and got to see Sarah Vaughan and another local gal, and
nice.
Just really inspired by people that are a few stages ahead of me as far as that. But I'm overdue to record, so I'm pretty excited to finally just get paid. I've done a lot of volunteer work. I feel like that's kind of been my gift for the past 10 or 20 years. I've also worked in social service. I've been working with disabled people, so doing like music therapy circles.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of my other side.
So, and here's where, I mean, we really decided to sit down and talk. What's worked for you in terms of promotion, marketing, and booking?
You know, I find that word of mouth is the best thing ever. And of course the internet is something that is also instrumental in really reaching people globally and being able to do that without traveling. But I think, you know, it's so many different ways. You have to work on lots of different fronts. And, you know, in the old days I used to make flyers for a lot of shows I did. It was different in the 90s. We had a Dyke March once, and I threw an event at an old futon factory that was probably not safe to be in. 500 women showed up, and we played a punk show and rocked out, and you know, things like that. But over the years, it's like finding a way to again really focus what's getting done and where I want to go with it. So as far as promoting, it's like instead of always making it about community, it's learning how to really promote myself. I find as a musician, it's sometimes hard to toot your own horn, and
yes.
In that way, having a manager is really important. And having a full, basically professionally, although I have a music degree and although I've played my whole life, I've always struggled with letting myself do it full time. I know you've got some other questions that are kind of in that area of, you know, how do we balance those things, right? Like our full-time day jobs and our other jobs, whatever that might be. I mean, like I said, I went out and played on Tuesday night. I was up till 12:15. I was wrecked. The next morning I had to work at 9, and you know, so it's a way to find like how do you play out and do the bar scene or club scene and still stay healthy and
I think I'm a little more that way familiar with the 80s because I grew up with a father in a rock band.
Sure, okay.
I've discussed this a little bit on the podcast, but not much. I'm a kid who grew up in the rock world and rebelled by becoming a classical musician and going to church. Because what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
God help some of our friends' kids. They're going to be like me. So I fully understand what it's like to see him coming home at 1, 2 in the morning getting up at 5 o'clock, leaving for work before we're even out of bed at 7, and doing the whole thing over for, say, Stampede Week all week.
Yeah.
But it seems people nowadays are a lot more interested in finding that balance and in making sure that they're healthy enough to share their art.
Especially, over the long term.
Which is a fantastic thing to see, because people were burning out. We certainly see a lot of the celebrities still burning out who are doing those kind of schedules, but certainly a lot more local musicians are trying to take care of themselves. And I think that's one of the best things that I've seen. I am a young folk musician. Where should I begin in finding shows as a folk musician in Calgary?
Well, there's some pretty cool different types of options. There's the old school actual folk clubs where people that, back in the day in the 60s, I'm reading a great book on Pete Seeger, and he's just talking about the movement of his Sing Out book and him just traveling the world, really, traveling North America. And nowadays, people... So often music is sold for money, and that's fine. Like I said, it's good to support yourself. I think the starving musician thing is pretty overrated. But there's some local folk societies where people can plug in, and basically it's a nice place to start for getting shows. It's a nice place where people will appreciate singer-songwriter music. It doesn't always have to be about a glamour image or something that's really sexy or something that's even super political. You can just have your everyday song about.
I can have an extra bump around my waist and nobody cares.
That's right.
Yeah,
and also just singing about everyday things, like finding the beauty in that. So sometimes, you really want to make a sound and go for a certain thing with your band, and other times you're just kind of, at that point you're writing songs about your life, and you want to be in front of an audience where people appreciate that. So I would, and also of course the open mic circle, getting plugged in with all the bars and all the different venues that do hold. Some cafes hold open mics every night of the week, pretty much in most cities, and find the ones that you like. Different ones feature different types of music. But usually people running them are pretty nice. And of course, getting online, record your music these days. You can go into pretty much any Apple place and get your local garage band, downloaded or, work off the internet in that way, which is pretty awesome. That's what I'm learning how to do at my age. I've had a Mac for a couple years, and it's still pretty daunting as far as getting how to run it. But once you kind of just keep taking those steps, talking to people, it's pretty amazing how you can just get up on iTunes and get your music out there through SoundCloud, through Reverb Nation. There's a lot of options these days.
Yes. Do you have any favorite venues in Calgary?
For sure. I mean, the Ironwood's been holding some good ground for a long time. I've seen some good shows there. The Ship and Anchor seems like the songwriting contests that they do, especially with Folk Fest, have really bring in some great talent. And like I said, Mikey's recently I went down to. Cafe Koi, a lot of my friends really enjoy. They've got a great sound system.
Cafe Koi.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot that I don't know of. I know Shamrock does some stuff. Kate Lewis and some of those gals, they were doing open mic down there for a while. It was pretty amazing. I played with the whole band, like I said, as a solo musician, all of a sudden have a drummer, a bass, a couple guitars, like, what's the key? Let's go. But yeah, so that was kind of fun. Like I said, just don't open the back door. It's very scary over at Shamrock if that happens.
Yes, it is.
Oh my God, I ran and left my ID and my drink on the table, apparently. But anyway, other venues, cafes are really nice because, like I said, it's nice to sometimes have music not be related to alcohol.
Yes.
And then alcohol events at night are also a whole nother, getting people to dance and kind of just being in a party mood.
It's more expected, yeah. And the bands that don't have people dancing tend to get kicked out at 10 and they bring in a DJ.
Yeah, that too.
In Calgary, it seems, in some of the venues.
Yeah, Calgary's a funny town that way. It's there's not enough venues available. I really wish the community centers were not being charged. I find it really outdated that we have like veterans and all respect for people that fought in the war and the history of where we've been, but we have youth that are desperate for places to get together. We have youth that are breaking bus stops and going around. Recently, a bunch of cars were slashed because kids don't have stuff to do.
Tire on the car,
everything costs money. I mean, what if we had free bus passes after midnight and places to go where there was video games and free shows, all ages shows?
We don't have all ages in Calgary.
Pisses me off, actually. Don't get me started.
There is the New Black Club, which is encouraging younger
another place
musicians.
I just heard of. It's awesome.
But there's not a lot of all-age venues in Calgary.
The police are afraid of them because, unfortunately, the drugs and the alcohol get mixed, and it's learning how to, make safe places where people can party without drugs until they're legally able to choose later. I mean, I don't want to. Sometimes drugs have their place, but and I think that as an adult, people need to make choices, and that's a huge other topic. But as far as all ages shows, I think as a social worker, still in my heart forever, I think the Calgary police are afraid because not enough older adults like my age maybe have made it safe, a little bit more safer. and also the permits, the way the permits are worked. But
Yeah.
so that makes it hard to promote if you're a young band and you're like, under 18, and there's not so many options for you,
No, and I think it's certainly something, having grown up in the theater community that I did. I went to a lot of parties with alcohol, a lot of parties with drugs, and I was very
Me too.
fortunate to have adults who looked at me and said, "You're not 18 yet. You don't even get to touch it."
Yeah.
Very,
That's
very
that's the
fortunate.
downside of a lot of hippie culture. And the wonderful part is you learn to feel a compassion for other things, and you are hippie, whatever, coming from hipster, and the poets and people that were slowing down, and the beatniks that had the drum man and were trying to speak
Yes,
from their heart.
yes.
And maybe they were privileged and white, but they were searching, for something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's evolved to where we are now with like the slams, the poetry slams that we have.
Love
and,
poetry
Oh,
slams,
it's
yeah.
Auburn. I forgot about the Auburn.
Yeah,
as well.
Auburn.
So,
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about
Calgary's
that.
got so many good places, and for me it's just getting out, really making sure I get out. It's hard when I don't know if it's getting older, I don't know if it's like I'm just tired, I don't know.
I do think, and it's a
Well,
little.
that is it. I've been depressed, so that's part
It's
of
a
it.
little. It's. I
You know?
understand that.
Life and living and all.
It's a little off topic, but definitely the arts in general are screaming for space in Calgary. Having worked on a board of directors for an arts organization in Calgary, it's getting impossible to find space. I go to conferences, theater conferences, and people are talking about how can we hold a show in a store that shut down and is not being rented for a month and get the permitting. And there are people who've managed to find spaces that have been willing to rent to them
Yeah.
so they could do a show.
You know what would be
And then
really
the city
cool?
turns around and shuts it down.
What would be so cool is a union of the burlesque people, a union with the all ages people,
Yeah.
a union with the theaters, the Green Fools, and all the other places
Yeah.
that have had trouble finding space to continue their amazing work in Calgary. A
The
union of,
circus school,
of some
yeah.
sort of performance union where we actually have a voice. Because as a busker, I'm going to go busk after this talk, and there's nothing like putting your case out and feeling like people are looking at you like a beggar. When I have a $20,000 degree from Antioch University, Seattle, and
Yeah.
I've paid $10,000 to $15,000 to become Canadian.
Yeah.
I've paid taxes in both countries, and yet I still have to kind of fight for my validity to stand in public and do what I love, sing. And it's important that the city supports it. The city, whatever the city is, the people that have the money, the corporations.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negativity that I see in the world because we don't afford creativity in a place to actually get our emotions out. We're a world of drinking coffee and eating food to satiate our needs, and art and music and theater, dance. Those things are crucial.
And community, essentially. And I think a lot of the problems that we're talking about with youth is a lack of community. And it's hard because musicians, artists in general, we thrive off community, we thrive off the ideas. And it's lacking here. Definitely. I mean, thank
as we're talking,
God we have the mayor we have.
No kidding, hey?
I've seen Nenshi out
Yeah.
at the Fringe Festival. I've seen Nenshi out at the Philharmonic. I've seen this guy out there getting involved.
Yeah, and Calgary's
prior
changing.
to becoming the mayor.
That's right.
So how lucky are we to
Yeah.
have such a mayor?
Well, as we're talking, I'm thinking of so many other places. I'm like, okay, what about Cantos? The
Cantos
national.
Music, yeah.
What are they doing at the National Music Center?
Yes,
and
that
they've
they're
gotten
working on.
national recognition.
Yes.
And they have some all ages blues jams that are going on.
Awesome.
On my list of things to do, I believe it's Blues Monday. You can check that out on their site. And those are non-alcoholic all age venues, and young bands can go and play there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And learn do actual workshops with players. And so I don't know. I think sometimes people really slam Calgary because of the history of.
Well, and we do have a lot of
oil
bylaws.
community,
We are the most bylawed city in I think, North America.
Well, we know what burlesquing was, what the whole community of vaudeville at all in that way. With fire, spinning, eating.
You're not allowed to, fire. I got bylawed out of having fire at Boob Rock in 2010.
Me too at the Soda when I tried to do a show.
Yeah.
We couldn't do that.
If you're a busker, technically it's still illegal to have any kind of amplification. Really? I can't be heard over my guitar if I'm playing a guitar without amplification.
And yet
sometimes.
we have people that are apparently getting permits that play. I've had to compete against what is it called? A beautiful bagpipe.
Yeah.
Sounds great, but I definitely can't play anywhere in Prince Island Park when they're doing their set.
No, yeah, exactly.
And what's the other one that I love so much? I mean, saxophone is not so bad because after about a block, you can kind of not hear it as much.
Saxophone's
But a couple
awesome.
instruments, there's another one that just drives me crazy. And as far as decibel and comparing, it'd be really nice if we could have some sort of really cool. You could go in and get tested and know what your amp at 3 or 4 was the decibels we're looking at 4 that normally come out of people's cars or out of your general noise you have on the street.
Yeah.
And that would seem fair. You know what I mean? Instead of just saying no amplification. Other cities have already dealt with this, so it's only in a matter of a couple years. And we have to think as a public that we have the right to be in public space, and as long as we are respecting other people's rights to safely move by, and we're not begging, we're not demanding,
No,
that's the problem with when you get into busking in general. That's a whole other point.
I think Calgary. We can talk a little about busking. I think Calgary in general, compared to other cities around the world, I have friends who go to Australia. They busk. People like them so much.
Yeah.
They're playing in the venues. You can do that in New York. You busk, a venue walks by, and you are so working, right?
They like hire you to go.
They'll hire you to go.
Nice.
I have a friend who worked his way across Australia, doing magic. You go through parts of Europe, and you get stage shows from your busking. But some people stick with the busking because they make so much money. We actually have to pay buskers to come to Calgary for our Fringe Festival.
Yeah,
because they're not going to make enough money to break even from the hat because they're getting such low numbers.
Well, people don't understand the hat here. I mean, any city that has the amount of oil revenue and the most money in Alberta, Canada used to be had the largest surplus of the G8, even though we like to play coy that, what do you mean? Canada has a lot of power, and yet in Alberta we choose to kind of just deal with it in a really strange way.
I don't know if it's Alberta because Edmonton, I think, certainly understands the hat.
But Edmonton also has a working class culture based on environment, based on, I think, activism and the fact that the capital's there. It is the capital, right? I've been here for 10 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, I know stuff. Yay.
You're a smart
I even know where
American.
Newfoundland is. I was calling the Nova Scotia Bank Newfoundland Bank today, but it's I don't know. It's
As
great
a
to
Nova
talk with you
Scotian,
about.
I think that's cute.
It's great to talk with you about just thinking of Calgary in just musical terms and.
Well, no, and that's certainly what we're here for. Is we hope that people listen to our show who maybe want to get into music, who want to support the music industry, and we're giving them ideas how to support us. But we're also giving them, say they've been sitting in the garage with the guitar and they want to get out of the garage and maybe play a little bit, and that's kind of what we're hoping to do. So, do you have any upcoming shows you would like to plug?
My biggest goal right now is to focus on getting my demo done and to be busking this summer. So I don't actually have a show scheduled. Let me think. I'm probably going to play the Calgary Dyke March, so maybe I do have a show. But that's all the way in September, so that seems really far right now. I don't even know exactly what day, but yeah, look for me there. You can
Post
also
a
find
link
me
on your Facebook, and we'll link to your Facebook on our website.
Sure. I'll do that.
Okay.
I'm going to be hanging out most summers, Saturday and Sunday, down at, like I said, Prince's Island Park is where I like to go a lot. It's a beautiful area by the river, and usually Eau Claire, and that circle is really nice. And 17th Ave. The busking, and also doing some drum circles on my Facebook. I will be inviting open community to come down. I'm putting a couple together at Riley Park. I used to lead some, I would say, kind of sacred drum circles, some chanting, some singing, but just fun too. Those aren't really considered shows, but you can see I'm still committed to the community piece. I find it's really grounding for me, and especially in a city like Calgary where you're either kind of plugged into a quite specific spiritual kind of activity, or you're sort of not maybe doing something that's spiritual that way. So yeah, I play my djembe and some other instruments, and
cool.
Bring some of the best of the West Coast. Actually, the next one I'm going to be doing is coming up with the eclipses. So this Wednesday, the 15th, at 7 to 9 p.m. At Riley Park is where we're going to be. There's a nice little tree grove.
I don't know if we'll be edited by then, but we'll try to put it up if it is.
You bet.
To be honest, it takes a few days.
I totally understand.
We've kind of broached this, but what are your thoughts on the Calgary music scene in general?
I think it's awesome. I think it's growing. I think it's really underrated what's here, and it's important for me not to do that. Seattle had a certain flavor that certain bands, I'm just spacing on what am I trying to say? It got really, really, you think of certain movements like the grunge movement. So I think here we're kind of stuck in this country movement. There's a video that came out recently that's We're Not All Cowboys. I forget who put it up. It's awesome. It's on YouTube. It's the hot new thing. Jan Arden's in it, and this local hip hop bands. It's really, really great. I think that says the vibe right there. We're not all cowboys, and there's nothing wrong with being a cowboy or working the farm. And I love country music. I'm pretty stuck in the roots. But I have a whole other side. I have I like to beatbox, and I like soul, and I didn't really talk about my other influences, but like Gladys Knight and the Pips and Staple Singers and all that, the stuff from reggae. So yeah, Calgary has a lot of different vibe, and I think that the more that we get out and be a part of it, the more that we really feel that and see that. And, you know, you have to support live music for it to continue. That's the hardest thing.
Exactly.
You have to support dance. You have to support theater, or else it doesn't really thrive. And that's what's nice about making sliding scale or making it affordable.
On a side note, if we're going to talk sliding scale, I'm in the Philharmonic. I have a show tonight.
Yeah?
You're all going to miss it. Sorry, podcast people.
Yeah.
But I'm singing Carmina Burana. It's epic.
Ew.
One of the great things that the Calgary Philharmonic is doing, and it's awesome, I think they're one of the few orchestras that are not in the red this year. We are in the black.
Yeah.
And we've sold out a number of shows this year. One of the things that they are doing, and I think it's a fantastic initiative because you don't require a student ID for it. If you're between the ages of 12 and 29, you can get $12 tickets to the Philharmonic.
There you go, perfect.
It's rush seating, so you might end up in the front row, you might end up in the nosebleeds, and yes, your nose will bleed up there.
Yeah, exactly. But you're in a seat.
But you're there, and
Yeah.
honestly, the nosebleeds have the better acoustics,
There you
so
go, for
head
sure.
up there. And it's $12. And
That's right, it's
they're cheaper
affordable.
tickets. I have friends who aren't getting those tickets, and they're spending $20 tonight. So that's the great thing. Look into some of those programs. If you have a student ID, use it. Come on, I mean, it's going to be awesome. So what are your thoughts on social networking, like Twitter and Facebook?
Well, I've talked about that a bit. I mean, I think that there's a positive side. If you really are focused with what you're using a tool for, then it's a tool. If you are making it your whole life, then it becomes a sort of like it leads you, it rules you. It's the only thing you can do. So I think that as far as, I don't know, that's such a hard question. I don't really know how to answer it.
Okay.
I think that it's fine. I think people spend too much time getting sucked into it. Like, for example, for me, I don't have enough stuff online yet. I'm still working on it. Rather than sitting online and pining about everyone else's work, sometimes you can get on and really compare yourself to other people and spend a lot of time sort of just not really necessarily promoting yourself, example, just sort of listening to other people's stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that it's pretty... I'm not on Twitter. I thought about doing it, but I mean, just changing my Facebook status. I mean, I got on MySpace when everyone kind of ditched it. I feel like every time I get on something, they're ditching it. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm on MySpace. Where's everybody going? Oh, before that we had TribeNet. That was kind of cool for a little while.
I remember a couple others, and I can't remember what they
Yeah.
were all called, and I had accounts, and I don't remember what they
Exactly.
were.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook a lot. I find that for me, I'm also living in another country, so it helps me communicate with my family members. But honestly, I'm networking. Most of my friends on there, half are family and half are musicians and artists. So I
Okay,
really do
awesome.
enjoy it. I enjoy Facebook quite a lot. I guess I'm kind of embarrassed how much I enjoy it. I mean, because I am aware of the fact that everything I say is being tracked and that I have to edit myself so much. And believe me, it's painful. I mean, every single thing we have to
And the
say
whole
is
new
edited.
facial recognition crap.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. I mean,
I'm going to
that's a whole
start
nother
tagging
podcast,
trees
isn't it?
with my face.
I think, like my mom says, you have to, there's a lot of prayer and a lot of just knowing that, if your heart's in good intentions and you're just being, some things, do need to be censored in certain places. It's not always good to put it out there. I tell my niece that, the younger generation, like everything you say is on there forever. I was dating a couple years ago. Well, okay, I'm married now for almost 3 years and dated for 5. So this is a long time ago, you guys, like 2005. And you go Google and you're like, oh, look at all Jade's dating sites, and I just think nowadays you just have to be really mindful to not slam other people, to use things in a respectful way, to write full sentences, to say your name at the beginning, like just even general emailing.
You are
Like I don't text very much because I just...
a little bit of love and peace on the net.
But if you don't text or you don't use certain communications, I feel like you are quite out of the loop.
Yeah, that's true.
You embrace technology what works for you, but don't let it rule you, kids. I don't know, I find a lot of us do that. And,
Okay.
like even tuning your guitar. Like, yeah, use your tuner, rock on, but don't forget how to use your ear and tune your own guitar.
That's an awesome thing to say. I love that. What are your thoughts on new media and podcasting?
Well, I think, like I said, I think the new media is changing all the time, and I think that I don't need to be a dinosaur and be scared to embrace it. Like, I mean, what's the worst thing about being on Twitter? The hardest thing is you have to have a cell phone and actually update. Like, for me, I would use it when I go busking. Oh, someone's in my spot. I'm not at Eau Claire. I'm heading up to 17th. It'd be nice for, like, at the moment what's happening. But, I don't really like these tracking satellite things. I don't like the electricity of it. I don't like it. So then that makes it hard. But I think that... like new media for me, like especially like something like podcasting, or for me, my Mac, the fact that I can make home videos,
Getting your music right on iTunes immediately.
I think it's totally awesome.
Awesome. Okay.
Awesome, dude. That was totally in unison. We're so like West Coast, hang 10.
I'm so East Coast, it's
Woo-hoo.
ridiculous.
Oh, well, I
Okay.
have roots now in Nova Scotia. I'm married into the kitchen
Yes.
parties, so I feel good.
Dark
And
and
I've got some
straight.
Irish in me, so,
We're good.
a wee bit.
It can be difficult for an artist to find balance between creative efforts and daily responsibilities, i.e. making enough money to be an artist. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the main thing I could say on that would be like epic books, like a 3-part novel. So the simplest thing I could say is that we have a weird capitalist culture that teaches that things that are enjoyable, certain things are recreation and certain things aren't. A plumber's going to make $25 an hour, but a teacher's going to make, less. Or we have weird comparisons, and I think as artists we have to quit thinking that what we do is not valuable. Mm-hmm. We all know poems and movies and books that have changed our lives and touches us. And I think if we're really drawn to something that we love in our heart and we're geared towards doing it, like pursue it with all you've got. And don't do what I did and get stuck for 25 years in social service or another career, because you kind of put yourself through school. And then all of a sudden you get really good at it. And then you're doing gigs. I taught guitar, I taught music for many years, but I'd always fall back on thousands of jobs. And I always got fired over and over and over because I would be an activist and stand up for the little guy. There's a lot of discrimination in the States working through my 20s. But also because I need to get back to my music. I need to do what I love. So I really recommend that, people don't give up in that way.
The music industry has changed a lot in the last couple of decades. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of scary. Like we were talking earlier about how people can just download music for free, and if you put stuff out there, it can be really easy to not make the money that you need to make. There's a lot of moral decisions in that way, I think, as far as what we steal. It is stealing in that way, I think. But also there's this sharing that's really... I miss the old days of mixtapes and being able to share music in that way.
I love that, yeah.
And even now, with mashups and pin
Even
samples
mixed
and
CDs I miss.
Yeah,
and
I make those still.
That's a generation thing, right? Like
My
I grew up-
iTunes, my playlists.
I did actually have mixed cassettes, but those things where you're like, just want to bless a friend, or I remember somebody
Make some
giving me a
memories.
CD when I was in the hospital, and they just put together the music that they thought would make me feel good.
That's right, and get into a healing mode, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to remember what we're talking about. I'm like, okay, I'm totally there. I'm in a healing mode.
Things changing in the last 20
Well, yeah, it's changing so fast I can't even keep up. Like for me, I'm going to go play acoustic guitar. I'm going to stand out in the street and put my old style case on the ground. I mean, you can't get any more like old-fashioned than that. I'm going to sing without a mic. I'm going to drink water out of a
You're going to
thermos.
sing without a microphone?
Oh my God.
How can you do that?
I wish you know what would be cool though? If I could have a solar, total Madonna style mic and, no hands. And basically be amplified a bit. It would be a lot nicer on my voice. I could relax quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
I wish that the decibel, that whole thing we talked about, decibel, excuse me, not decibels. That's numbers. Oh my goodness. So anyway, as far as being able to go and do your thing, and as far as moving into,
We're talking about music change.
there's too many people in here.
It is getting a little distracting, and somebody just got arrested outside.
You're getting distracted too. I'm like, oh my God.
Welcome to the joys of, we had
Downtown Calgary on a Friday night.
We had an interview in Denny's podcast ago, and now we're doing in a Beltline Tim Hortons. So, it's
Represent true
interesting.
Canadiana.
True downtown Calgary, man.
Well, I was talking about busking all the time, and then I'm like, is that related to what you're talking about, or am I
No,
just
it's
being
totally related.
totally busking focused all the time?
So, do you have anything else you want to talk about on our podcast before we go here today?
I'm full of ums, I guess. Can we delete all those? Delete. That's what's great about technology. Delete,
We'll beep
edit,
them out
edit,
as
beep,
though
beep.
you were swearing. How's
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Wait, I'm really excited about where I'm going in my career. I've waited a long time to do music full time. I mean, like I said, I've taught music before, and I've done a lot of circle, music therapy type of working with people with Down syndrome and autism, and I've learned basically to draw on everything in my life as experience towards what I love the most, which is, to tell you the truth, writing music. Writing music and writing songs is something that I do every day, probably 2 or 3 songs a day. I mean, if I could just sit and write songs, every time I hear a phrase, it's a song.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
yesterday it was, I don't even know how it came to be in my head, but it was the Bluetooth phones, right? So Bluetooth boy and texting girl. And just kind of like this whole, he's talking to her, she's texting, and somehow they're sending, even voice messaging seems really old at that point, they're sexting, right? It's a sex scandal, the Wiener recently. And just thinking about how, music is so healing in that way, things that are frustrating, and I wish that more people in general didn't think that they had to be professional, didn't think that they had to try to make money at it or make it their whole life, because I haven't, and I've always judged myself for that. But at the same time, like, no, I haven't done Ani DeFranco's route and just toured straight for years. I haven't done Katie Lang's route and gotten a lot of things recorded at a young age. But I've played with so many people, and I've had such an honor of just experiencing shows where, I mean, recently I've been playing between burlesque girls over and over, at Boob Rock, at a fundraiser at Dickens, and so I say to a lot of people, don't be afraid to get out there and try something you haven't done as well. I mean, I don't know, but at the same time, like I said, don't be held back by what you really want to do, and that's where I'm excited about. Just moving forward, especially in times where there's a lot of grief on the planet and there's a lot of fear and confusion with where we're going to go with 2012. We're going to rock the new calendar, people. It does not end, and then we have.
You don't think the world's going to end in 2011? That's awesome.
No, it's ending very, very many times as we go. The old world's, not in a physical way. So anyway, Calgary's an exciting city. I'm looking forward to where it's going. Speaking of Katie Lang, we have her for Folk Fest this year.
Awesome.
I think I'm going to actually bus the festival
instead of going.
Did I hear Joni Mitchell
is coming this year?
No, not Joni Mitchell, but Buffy St. Marie will be here as well.
Buffy St. Marie.
It's
That's
going to be a good lineup.
about,
Some good women.
Yeah,
I'll be outside, like I said, busking. I usually go to the Folk Fest. I'm pretty die-hard.
I will be walking a 60-kilometer that weekend.
Go, girl.
I will be listening to the Folk Fest while I go around the Folk Fest at one point. So
Nice.
Nice free music for us walkers.
Exactly.
If anybody wants to busk along the route, I'm sure we wouldn't complain, but we might not have the cash.
Yeah.
So
It's nice that we have a city that can put on such a really great show right in the middle of town.
And there's the other thing that I've heard about recently. There were buskers that went out for the Scotiabank Marathon to play for the runners while they ran.
Sweet.
How awesome is that,
Yeah.
that we have musicians doing that here
Yeah.
in Calgary?
Yeah, the Bow River Flow's coming up as well. There's a lot of things this summer that are pretty community-oriented. If you want to play at that venue, you can get a hold of Arusha. They're probably still booking people for that. And,
good to know.
Yeah, it's a good way to promote yourself. I mean, like I said, I kind of complained a bit about doing free shows, but it's also a really great way. I shouldn't say I complain. It's just you want to move on. You want to be able to know it's okay to charge. At some point, you have to say, no, I'm sorry. That's going to be $300.
Okay,
Like right now, I'm doing a gift, a friend for a wedding. I'm writing a song for the wedding. I'm playing their walking song. I'm playing their probably the after music, and it's a gift. I'm not charging, but for if I want to do it professionally, then it's okay to know that it's a real job.
Mm-hmm. And do you know when that Bow River Flow Festival is, so we can tell our listeners?
I know. I bring these things up.
We'll link it on the website.
July or August? Gosh, I don't even know.
It's one of those.
I don't.
months. Okay. We'll link it.
I'm just throwing everything out there, guys. You have to Google all my awesome links. Link up with my Google bits. Come find me on the Jadesong Facebook with the Google bits. Oh, my Lord.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on our podcast today.
On my very tired day, yes, you got me on a silly day. It's
Both of
been
us
great.
a little bit,
Really good to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
If you have any questions or comments regarding this podcast, send an email to comments@daw-music.com. And I'm back with today's closing segment. Don't worry, I'm probably going to keep it short and sweet, just like the intro segment. I don't really have any new announcements to make, but we do look forward to seeing you at the Calgary Fringe Festival. Again, that's July 29th to August 6th. I will be performing at 9 Cafe with my band, and we look forward to seeing your tanned and smiling faces there. Now, Anna had a couple things that she wanted to discuss in this closing segment. However, we're probably going to leave that for another episode at another time, because it's a little hard to work our schedules. But it's better to get an episode out than not at all. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Coming this summer to the Calgary Fringe Festival, the David Andrew Wiebe Band, featuring the music from his upcoming release, Back on Solid Ground, introducing the songwriting, guitar, and vocal talents of David Andrew Wiebe. We will be joined by Mae Alexander on backing vocals.
This is the story of my life, accusations from my pride.
Joshua Park on violin. Patrick Zielinski on keyboards and guitar. Dan Poole on bass, and other great performers. You don't want to miss this event. Tickets are $12 and will go on sale July 1st. Back on Solid Ground will be hosted at 9 Cafe, which is located in the heart of Inglewood at 1319 9th Ave, Southeast Calgary, Alberta. This majestic event will begin on July 29th and will go to August 6th. Get your tickets today at the Calgary Fringe Festival website, calgaryfringe.ca.
This podcast is a part of the Blueberry Network. You can find this and other great podcasts at blueberry.com. That's blueberry with no e's.com.
You've been listening to the David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, broadcasting from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. This has been a Red Flame production. To learn more about Red Flame, go to redflamerecords.com.